Hey everybody, welcome back to Red Road Paranormal. We got a little bit of a weird thing going on here because I'm not at home. I'm not in my home office. I am in my friend's healing room and classroom and really enjoying kind of having the time here. But I'm happy to announce that we have Rez, my wonderful co-host, and our friend Sam Baltrusis. And eventually I'm going to learn to speak, and it's all going to be great. So take
Yeah,
it away, Rez.
we all get tongue-tied from time to time.
Yeah,
It's just a part of what we do.
it
So I
is.
hope everyone's having a great day today. Welcoming Mr. Sam Baltrusis to the show. Some man I got to speak a little bit with this summer over at the Moonbow Metaphysical event. And this guy's a great guy. Done a lot of good things. I've been a fan for him for a few years now from some of the different specials that he's done. So, Sam, why don't you tell us about this latest book that you got started out?
Hey guys, how's it going? So I am in the middle of launching my book. It's called Ghosts of Sleepy Hollow, Haunts of the Headless Horseman. And so this is a project it's actually number 18 of my books. It's near and dear to my heart because I lived in New York City for about almost like 10 years or so, and I would go to Sleepy Hollow back in the not to age myself in the late 90s or early 2000s. But
Youngin.
was
You're a youngin.
I'm a youngin, but
Yeah.
always wanted to go back, and I didn't necessarily want to go back to write a book, but I've always been a fan of Sleepy Hollow, and I've been a huge fan of Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So as I started writing books, I'm like, you know what, I want to write a book on Sleepy Hollow, on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And this gave me a great excuse to travel back and forth because I actually live right outside of Boston and
Okay.
travel back and forth during the usually it was started like last October. I spent Halloween night in Sleepy Hollow, but started basically going every weekend to do the research. So it's been a labor of love, and I've had so much fun.
That's
Ooh,
awesome.
Halloween and Sleepy Hollow. That'd be a cool experience, I
I
think.
can't wait. I can't wait to
Yeah,
read it.
yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun to read. I have a lot of history inside the book as well. Some kind of like feminist manifesto as well. I had a few friends beta read it, and they were like, "Sam, you're really kind of going," because I really talk about uh, the sort of the lady in white tropes in the book. Like, why is that repeating? And also, I talk about Native American tropes as well. Sort of the idea that everything is a Native American burial ground, and all, there's a lot of otherizing Native Americans in the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, really. So kind of go into that and but I'll of course talk about the main character, the Headless Horseman.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, all the authors that come on this show, I always ask them the same question. How do I get an autographed copy?
Well, this one's going to be a little bit more difficult because it's selling like hotcakes. But any of the events that I go to, I'll have signed copies. I also probably at some point I'll have it where you can purchase a copy online, and I'll send a signed copy to you. But right now you have to purchase it at like either in bookstores or on Amazon because we're almost to the point it's pre-sales. The book officially launches at the end of September, and we're already almost sold out with pre-sales. So it's selling really
Nice.
well.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm going to see Sam the first weekend of in October, which is going to be like this weekend.
Yeah, right.
So,
Right.
It's around the corner, right,
yeah,
Christina?
it is. It really is. Being that this show is released on October 2nd, I believe. So, it really is like this weekend I'm going to see you. So,
See you
Nice.
in 2 days, Christina.
yeah. Yeah, at Mass Paracon. I'm so freaking excited.
Awesome. I wish I could make it with you guys. You have to remember me when you go by Sam's booth, grab one of the books for me.
Yeah, I'll have him sign your book for you.
Yeah, and I will have it at Mass Paracon. When I because I'm actually producing the event, so as you know, Christina, putting on the Moonbow event, it's a lot of stress to be able to make everything coordinate.
Oh,
I
yeah.
try my best to talk to everybody, but it's really difficult when you're running an event.
I'll hunt you down.
Oh yeah. She has her ways.
Oh,
Trust me.
yeah. I'll find you. No problem. So Mass Paracon, let's talk about that.
For
What's
real. I
going
want to
on
know.
there?
Yeah, so Mass Paracon is a roving paranormal convention that I've been putting on since 2017. What's special about Mass Paracon is it doesn't stay at the same location. A lot of the Paracons are in the same venue year after year, which is great from a branding perspective. But from what I wanted to do with Mass Paracon is I wanted to showcase the cities in Massachusetts that have been overlooked by history, but have a lot of hauntings associated with it. So when you think of Massachusetts, you think of Salem, and that is sort of my home turf as in regards to hauntings. But I wanted to focus on the other cities that haven't had a lot of uh, exposure, like upcoming the one in Fairhaven, which is a stone's throw from my distant cousin Lizzie Borden's house in Fall River. So it's pretty close to Fall River. It's in the south shore of well, it's actually not on the shore. It's kind of more in the middle of Massachusetts. But yeah, it's a 3 day convention. Starts Friday night. We have a VIP party. Saturday is the main event. That's where we have lectures and workshops, and we have the investigation. And then Sunday is the goodbye breakfast. So it's a lovely 3 day of paranormal community coming together. We have paracelebs, if you will, but they don't like to be called paracelebs. They're like people that you may or may not have seen on television that
Right.
gather together, and it's just a wonderful group. Every paranormal convention has a different vibe to it, and ours is definitely history driven. It's also family. It feels like when you return to Mass Paracon, it's like a family gathering.
Nice.
Sounds like something I'm definitely interested in checking out. I'll have to come
Yeah.
out next year.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, and the only sad thing is this is my last year doing it. So,
Oh,
I
break
know.
my heart.
Well, I like even though it's a amazing event, but it's really taxing. It's a lot of effort to put this together. So I decided I wanted to only do 7 because I felt like I really have maxed out, and when it comes to locations that I wanted to showcase. We've done Provincetown, we've done Plymouth twice, we've done the Berkshires, we've done Quincy, which is right outside of Boston. And so I feel like with Fairhaven, we kind of went all over the state of Massachusetts. So it's not that I'm just not going to do Mass Paracon. The goal is to do something maybe New England, or maybe focus on haunted travel. So I want to be able to travel all over New England, maybe even travel all over the country with the next Paracon.
That'd be fun. I'm all about
I'm
traveling.
already
If
on
I
your list for wherever you go, so I'm good. I'm settled. I'm good there. Um, I was going to ask you about that. Like, I have made obviously my reservations. I'm ready to go. Um, that place is huge. The resort that we're going to be at is huge.
Yeah, and it's right by the water. I mean,
Yeah.
the venue itself, we have the entire ballroom. So when it comes to these events, you have to kind of work with what they have. And I've had events. I had one at Concord's Colonial Inn. I actually wrote a book on Concord's Colonial Inn, but the space was pretty small, so everybody was kind of jam packed in a small area. And Concord, this one's not like that. It's huge. There's going to be a lot of space, a lot of vendors, and so what's good about the Fairhaven event? We'll have enough space to host a lot of people. But I also I'm more of an intimate Paracon person, so it's not going to be like thousands of people like Michigan or like the Paracons. It's going to be a smaller venue. So taking that large space and making it where it fills up, but also where it feels intimate, that's going to be the challenge.
Yeah, definitely going to be the challenge. I had that's not as much of a challenge with that, but even with the Moonbow at Broadhead Manor, that was a fairly large room to try to make it feel intimate, you know?
Yeah, and I probably like that's going to be the biggest challenge. We do have where we're going to have partitions where we can have one section is going to be for the vendors, one section for the speakers. We do have a separate room that is where the kickoff party is going to be. It's called the Commodore Room, and that's where we have 2 museums set up. So we have the Jeff's traveling boards, they're spirit boards, and there's a collection of spirit boards in that.
Talk to him.
Yeah. And then also Danny and Lauren Perez, the Radicals, they have haunted objects that they're bringing. So for the smaller room. So if the big room is kind of like overwhelming, I say go to the smaller room and check out the museum space in at the Commodore Room.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
Very
meeting
cool.
Jeff. I had a pretty lengthy conversation with him a few days ago, and he was sending me pictures of his board museum, and it's all talking boards, what we're used to calling Ouija boards. But oh my gosh, there were some, like, just the energy of the picture gets sent chills down my spine with
Yeah.
some
I
of those.
It's funny because I'm good friends with Jeff, and I'm actually doing his main Paracon, which is coming up in September of 2025.
So am
And
I.
oh, good. I'm going to be
Yeah,
there too. But
Nice.
yeah,
but I also like I'm not a big spirit board person. I never really have been. So it's funny, like I'm okay with having spirit boards as art, but really it's about your intention.
it
I
is.
just personally stay away from them. I don't think that they're evil or anything like that, but I have seen people misuse them
Yeah,
and have things happen. So I'm more of a cautious person when it comes to spirit boards. But as far as art, there's one that I had for many years. Danny and Lauren Perez, they make them, and they made one for me for Salem, and I just had it in my home, and it didn't cause a problem, but I never used it.
yeah.
Yep.
The problem with
So,
spirit boards is that people aren't taught how to use them correctly.
yep,
There's
exactly. They're a
there's
tool.
yeah, they're a tool and they can be used as a tool, but when they're sold at toy stores, that's a problem. And that's
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're not only they're toy stores, dollar stores. There's like they're selling them for like $5 now, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna be interesting.
yeah. Well, they were
Right.
selling them at Toys R Us before Toys R Us shut down like years ago. And
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
Toys R Us, Kmart, they all had them.
yep.
I remember that growing up.
Yeah, the
You
problem
know.
is that they're not toys.
Nope.
That would be the problem. But wow, I'm really excited about that event come about your Mass Paracon, and I can't wait to read the book that you've written on Sleepy Hollow. Having read Sleepy Hollow and been a big fan of that book for a long time, I'm really excited to read your book.
Thank you. Yeah, the I've been a huge fan myself, and so like the idea of going to the locations that inspired Washington Irving and learning about the people that inspired Washington Irving to write the
Yeah.
tale was really fascinating for me, and almost like a dream come true. It's like my childhood dream to do something like this. But I also like learning that a lot of like Washington Irving was kind of a conflicted man. There was a lot to him when he was writing the stories. Like it's an amalgam of other like people's stories coupled with it was at the time it was called North Tarrytown, and the stories from the locals and combining it to make it Sleepy Hollow, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and also knowing that like the cartoon that I grew up on versus the actual story that we read in
Mhm.
high school and sometimes even in college, it's different. So there's a lot of differences. Like I always thought that the Headless Horseman had a jack-o'-lantern, and you get that from the Disney cartoon,
Right.
but in the short story, there's no jack-o'-lantern because this is pre-Halloween. This is like when it was written in the early 1800s. And also, too, it's not set in Halloween. I've always I kind of I think of the Headless Horseman as the harbinger of fall. You know, like he's sort of like the
Yeah.
poster boy for autumn. And we actually think the historians that have read the story and have studied the story think it was really set more towards Christmas, which Christmas Eve was a big time to tell ghost stories. So there's a lot of I guess myths and misconceptions associated with what we think was going on with Washington Irving when he wrote the story. But there's also a lot of legends and lore that I feel like that Washington Irving was almost perpetuating to make that area of New York sexy, I guess, like just sort of like more interesting. And it does have an energy to it,
It does.
but it doesn't have the same kind of energy as say like Salem. It's almost like a guilt-free energy in Sleepy Hollow that you pick up when you go as a sensitive.
Right. I'm trying to remember, is Sleepy Hollow where they have the grounds for the Renaissance Fair in New York?
I mean, I think so, but
I think,
there's
yeah.
I usually go around in October. So there's the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And that's another thing too. Nothing is nearby in Salem. Everything is pedestrian friendly. You can walk from
Right.
location to location. In Sleepy Hollow, there's a lot of walking, but not from the historic location to another historic location. I tried to do that. In fact, the opening of my book. I decided to stay at the Terrytown House Estate, which looks like on Google that it's very close to Sunnyside, which is Washington Irving's later in life home, where
Okay.
he lived before, actually where he died, where he passed, in right in Irvington, right outside of Sleepy Hollow. And I thought I was going to walk there from my hotel. Not a good idea. I
It's
decided
a
to go.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I decided to walk from the hotel, and it looked like it was like a 5 minute walk. It looked really close, but it was like winding paths, and you get why Sleepy Hollow is called Sleepy Hollow. It's like it has the vibe even on the streets. It's winding, and there's no pedestrian like sidewalks. There's just trees and bushes and rocks. So
Yeah.
almost got hit by a car trying to go to Sunnyside on Halloween night.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed that when we were in Sleepy Hollow, my son and I went there a few years ago, and he wanted to go to the Renaissance Fair there. That was his deal, right? So we went there, and it was just like, wow, this hard to get around this town. Like there's no direct way to get anywhere there.
There,
Yeah,
there, yeah, there really isn't. But what's good about it is once you get to the destination, there's a lot to do.
it's
So
true.
there's
Yeah,
various places that you can hang out. Like, I mean, I can spend days in the cemetery, and right around the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, there's the Phillipsburg Manor, which is right across the street. There's also that's kind of like the main hub of Halloween in Sleepy Hollow. But then if
right.
you go further down to Sunnyside and Terrytown House Estate, that's kind of all in the general same vicinity as well. The Lyndhurst Mansion is in that area too. So it's not walking distance per se, but it's definitely accessible.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful town.
It really is.
It's
It,
very pretty there.
it
Yeah.
feels like when you go in autumn, it feels like Halloween. It feels like the Halloween that I knew as a child. Salem, I spend a lot of time. I've given tours in Salem for almost 10 years. It feels like it's a tourist commercialized destination. It feels
Yes,
like
it does.
hocus pocus, and everyone's jammed on Essex Street, and you can't walk anywhere, and people are yelling, and it doesn't have the same childhood mystique that Sleepy Hollow. When
I
I was there,
agree.
I was almost in tears. It just reminded me of my childhood of Halloween dressing up and trick or treating, and just it felt like I was a kid again.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I love the atmosphere there. Yeah, that's really cool. I keep interrupting you, Rez. You keep opening your mouth and I start talking. Go ahead.
No, I just think that's an awesome feeling to have to be able to revert back to the memories of your childhood by going to a location like this and having that calm and that peace. You know, that's an amazing feeling that a lot of people can't get where they go. So that's pretty cool. But there is one thing I do want to backtrack. You mentioned you're akin to Lizzie Borden. How'd you find that out? Was that talked about amongst the family or just
No,
through
it's
research?
It's the family secret. Yeah, it's one of those things that my mother, who, bless her heart, she decides to. I mean, she was a wonderful mother. She spent her whole life like pretty much. I'm the oldest of five kids on my mom's side, and she focused on us for most of her life. But I asked my mom like, what would she like to be if she wasn't a full time mother? And she's like, I want to be a forensic investigator. And I'm like, okay, mom. She wanted to investigate crime scenes.
That'd
so
be cool.
so my mother decides in retirement to join ancestry.com and to research where we came from. And meanwhile, I've been writing about Salem and the murder, the horrific murders that happened in 1892. The Lizzie Borden family, so Abby Borden and Andrew Borden were bludgeoned to death in August of 1892. Written about that multiple times. Been writing about it since I was a journalist in the 90s. And so my mother decides to do Ancestry.com, and she found something that other people were finding at the same time using that. It's an online tool, Ancestry.com,
Right.
that our family so there was a one person that connected everybody that turns out that we're related to. Her name is Innocent Cornell Borden, and we didn't know her that she was connected to our family because she was named Innocent for a reason. Her father was accused of murdering his mother, and so Innocent was the child of. She was my great 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 grandmother was her mother. So her name's Sarah Earl, and so Innocent Cornell Borden was recently found out. And once that was found out on Ancestry.com, a whole can of worms were opened. So a lot of people that were famous in history for all sorts of things, whether it was horrific crimes or actually horrific murders that happened to them, whether they were victims or perpetrators, are related to Lizzie Borden, including my family. So my mother calls me and she's like, Sam. I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom, what did you find out? And so she really did. She did all her, before she told me, my mom made sure that we were actually connected, and we are. And so it's been about, I would say, about 3 years now since I found out. And then we took my mom's research, and I did a show called The Curse of Lizzie Borden with Dave Schrader, Chris Fleming, and that was actually filmed during COVID. And this is about 6 months before I found out that I was related to her, and my perception switched. It went from kind of viewing her as like a cold-blooded killer that killed her father and stepmother to someone that I'm related to. So it turned to someone that I wanted to know more about her. She's my distant cousin, and then of course being asked to be on the show, it was life changing for me. And not that I'm proud of being like related to her. It's just proud that I'm able to give a voice to someone that has been almost ostracized or marginalized by history.
Yeah. Me personally, I think she was physically innocent. I don't think she had anything to do with it, but I do think there was other forces at play.
Yeah, and if you watch the show, that was our thesis. Yeah, like that was sort of going in. Dave Schrader was like, "What do you think has gone on? What's going on here?" And I think that's what the curse is. The curse is that there's something dark that follows generation to generation. And if you look at all the people that we're connected to, it's mind-boggling. It's like we're connected to, this is through forensic DNA. We're connected to Eileen Warnos, who was a serial killer in Florida. We're also connected to Marilyn Monroe. She, like Norma Jean, was our distant cousin as well. And this was just found out using Ancestry.com coupled with DNA. So it's called forensic DNA, where you can take a ancestor's hair, you test the DNA, and you test Marilyn's hair, and it turns out that we're also related to her too. And knowing that her biological father can be proved after she passed is amazing. So using this new forensic DNA technique, we're able to uncover things that were secrets for many years.
Wow,
Nice.
that's incredible. That's like your family tree is just interesting. Like, I don't know another word to say it, but it's like I haven't really talked to anybody else who has that many interesting different figures in their family tree.
Yeah, we had to dig for it. It wasn't given to us, and a lot of people, they know that they're related to Ben Franklin or the Putnam family, which I'm also related to too. But the Putnams, who were major accusers in the Salem witch trials, was also something that was found from my mother. A lot of times, if people that are from New England, it's not very uncommon to be connected to famous people from New England, especially if your family was here is back the 1600s. There was only a few families around. So
Right.
you get connected
Right.
to one family, and you go back to the 1600s, and you're likely related to Lizzie Borden or to other people here. But yeah, like that's something I never thought could be possible. I grew up in Florida. Uh, and my dad was in the Navy, and my mom, we always thought we were Native American. Like that's always what my grandfather told us. But we also knew that my grandfather was his father was kind of like he was a traveler. So he started off in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and traveled all the way down on the coast of Florida, came up to the Gulf of Mexico, and that's where he met my great grandmother, who was Native, and they basically, like, my grandfather was the child of of a man that was from a wealthy family in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. So I didn't even know our family was from Portsmouth, Rhode Island. I went to college here in the 90s, just kind of called here, not even knowing that our family came from this area.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. That you're called back to basically what you consider like your ancestral lands,
Yeah.
where your family started. I
Yeah.
know I feel the calling, something like that, when it comes like the reservation and stuff like that. I knew growing up that's where I wanted to be, where I felt comfortable. So
And I believe in the ancestors, like, wanting post-mortem peace, and I feel like that's sort of like my role is in the family. I I personally, I don't, I mean, I find it interesting that I'm related to all these people, but you get a lot of people who are like, "Oh, you're related. Are you related to them too?" And I'm like, "Actually, I am related to them." But
hmm,
I feel like it's my role as someone that is a clairvoyant, and can communicate with the spirit realm, to somehow give these people from my family lineage that they probably did not have a proper voice when they were alive, to give them a voice after their death, and to honor them. And I think that a lot of times when it comes to especially the women in history, they're almost they're their story is told by men that wanted to hurt them, men that wanted us to hate them. And so we're going to think Lizzie Borden was this awful person. She actually wasn't. She was a lovely person uh, who lost her father. She loved her father. Her father, on all accounts, like, he wasn't a nice man, like, based on what I can tell from my research. Uh, but she also loved him. I mean, like, that was her world. So losing her father, and whether or not she actually did it, and like you said, I do think that she physically did it, but I don't think she mentally did it. She doesn't take accountability in the afterlife for killing her father, Andrew. Uh, and you can say, was it dissociative disorder? It's possible. I mean, that also runs in my family too. so,
mhm.
so mental illness coupled with alcoholism, which really runs in my family. So all that stuff kind of like could have been a factor.
Oh yeah.
I'm just curious if either of you have ever met anyone who didn't have mental illness and or alcoholism in their family, because I personally don't think I've ever met anyone who has like a clean family tree.
Not that I can think of. To be honest with you, everyone has even if they hide them, everyone has their skeletons in their closet, and so does their families. I know I had a sister that was an alcoholic, and I've gone down that road myself, at a younger age.
As
So
have I. Yeah. So,
yeah, we all battle our demons.
right.
Yeah, I've been sober for 15 years now, and really, people ask me, like, well, have you, like, why did you get into the paranormal? And I'm like, I've always been gifted. When I was drinking, I tried to drink the ghost away.
So
Um,
did I. Yeah.
and, and,
I
Yeah.
get that.
and you can't drink it away, and it actually made it worse. So what happened for me is, when I got sober, my I was still communicating with spirit. While when I got sober, it was actually intensified, amplified when I got sober, and so I took it from there and kind of took baby steps, kind of reclaiming who I am. And so it's been a journey of self discovery. But I also feel that a lot of, and you're right, like, alcoholism runs in everybody's family. But I also feel like if you look at the family tree, I also think that we're all, the line is gifted too. I think that they're, like, maybe some of them were clairvoyants. Like, maybe Lizzie was was clairvoyant. I mean, I don't know, but if you look at some of the people in our lineage, either they were victims or they were perpetrators. And I do know, because I've had an attachment myself. I do know our family line is prone to having attachments. So I wouldn't be surprised that Lizzie, and that's my general thesis, is that Lizzie was taken over by some, like, almost like a possession.
That's kind of the way I feel about the story.
I had that feeling
Yeah,
when I think I first heard about Lizzie Borden when I was probably junior high or high school.
that's
And
what time I heard about her.
that's and that was the way that I felt about it too. Like that it wasn't like if she was in her right mind, she wouldn't have done that. Something overtook her. And I didn't really have the words for it at that point because there was nobody in my life that was paranormal. So I didn't really have those words for it. And I think that's true of a lot of us. But I just had this feeling like I never really felt like she would have done that if something else wasn't in control of her.
I had a recurring dream over and over again before, like, even like from the 90s, really, from a long time, of going into the house, and like the wall, when I was able to finally go inside the house, which wasn't until around 2007, to go inside it actually matched up with my dream. So in the dream, there's a replay of what, and I didn't really know, back when I started having the dreams, that this was actually the Borden murders. But now that I've seen the photos and seen the house, it all made sense. But in the dream, it was black and white. There is a woman holding what looks like an axe or a hatchet behind her back. There's a man on the couch, and there's a man behind her wearing like a bowler hat, like a hat, and there's, but on the beneath it you can see lines, and it said Diablo did it. Uh, and I, after that, like, having that dream, I would wake up and I'd be terrified. And I've had the kind of continuation of the dream as well, where I'm upstairs in the attic bedroom, or the third floor bedroom, which is where Bridget Sullivan, the maid, slept, and I'm being pinned to the bed in the dream. And I see that Bridget is covering up the crime, the hatchet, and putting it in the closet. And there's actually still a closet there with like a cistern. And in the dream, she's showing me that she put the axe in the cistern, in the water, the well that was in the room. And I'm like, so I have been replaying this even before I knew the specifics of the murders. So the Diablo did it. It was a man, and some people say, like, was it the uncle John Morse? And if you really look at his story, he was creepy. I mean, John Morse was, he came to the house the day before the murders, kind of out of the blue. Instead of staying on the third floor, which is what he normally stayed when he visited the Borden family, he was on the second floor, which is where Abby Borden was murdered, on the second floor. And he had an alibi that was a solid alibi. Like, he was like, "Oh, I'm walking down the street, I'm talking to this person." So his alibi while the murder, it was almost like no one remembers everything that they do, and he was able to recall everything and everyone he talked to. So he had a solid alibi. But just if you look at his past, he was very sketchy.
Yeah, almost like a premeditated alibi to hide something,
Yeah.
you know.
Like, he was in cahoots. So the man standing behind Lizzie could have been John Morse, or it could, like, in other words, my dreams or my intuition was telling me that there was a man that was kind of controlling, using her almost like a puppet. Uh,
Yeah.
but I also think that, um, someone with that amount of rage, like the murders, like, savagely murdered Abby Borden, savagely murdered Andrew Borden. It wasn't just one chop with a hatchet; it was multiple hits, and it was a crime of passion. Like, what? Where did that anger
Mhm.
come from? And how could it come from a woman with? She was short. She was in her 30s. She actually, and this is something that I uncovered recently. She had injured arms. Like, she worked at the church. She taught Sunday school at the local church, and a dumbwaiter fell on her arms about a month before the murders. And she was injured pretty severely. And how could she commit that with the injuries on her wrists, and and get away with it? Like, I just, it
Right.
doesn't make sense to me.
I
Yep.
agree.
if you're possessed, though, you're not going to feel the med injuries, and you're going to have stronger strength than what you had to start with
Yeah,
because you have no boundaries at the point in time.
yeah.
Now, the brother there, the uncle, wasn't, if I remember correctly from the shock doc, wasn't he into some of the darker things he dabbled with or something like that?
Yeah, so the TV shows always kind of like focus on the things that 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 may or may not be true. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that is the rumor. I will say this: I'm really proud of that shock doc. I think that it was for me. It was near and dear to my heart to work with Chris Fleming and to work with Dave Schrader,
yep,
and also to work on a case that's so close to me, like that's so important to me. So like that, working on that was really important to me. But I also feel that it's TV, so yeah, like that part of it. Yes, I think John Morris had a history of dabbling in the dark arts, as it was referred to. Also, something that they alluded to, which I cannot be factually proven, is that perhaps that Lizzie and Emma were sexually abused. And it was only kind of hinted at. And that would explain sort of like the split, the disassociative split that happened
yep,
for her to commit the murders. But we don't have proof of that. There's no factual proof that Lizzie snapped because of a sexual abuse. But if you look at the house, there was a lot going on. Like the Andrews Borden's bed is connected to Lizzie Borden's room. Like there's a one door separating them. He had the control of the key. And this woman was an adult woman, and her dad was like literally like right next to her room, almost like he could come in and out when he wanted to. And she physically put up her to keep him out of her room. She would put up a dresser drawer to block it, and stuff like that. Like that to me, like that's someone that didn't have boundaries. And whether or
yep.
not it was sexual abuse, I know that there was definitely emotional abuse going on.
Yeah, that totally makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There had to be something going on in order for that to happen. There had to be something weird going on. I kind of want to get back to the headless horseman thing.
Okay.
Um, Tell us more about like your research on that, because I remember reading that, and don't remember a lot of specifics. I think I was in middle school probably, but I remember reading that and thinking this is weird. Like this is just weird. So,
I I it's weird. Like I when I read it, I'm like I loved it. Like it wasn't weird to me, but even though yeah. So the Ichabod Crane, he is a Yankee outsider from Connecticut. He comes into a small town called Sleepy Hollow. He wants to kind of like become part of this insular Dutch community, and they're really tight knit. And he falls in love with Katrina Van Tassel, and she's like a local. She's sort of like the beauty of Sleepy Hollow, and he's trying to woo her. And Ichabod Crane is based on his depiction as sort of like a really skinny kind of like nerd type. And there's another gentleman who sort of the alpha male of Sleepy Hollow. His name's Brom Bones, and Brom Bones doesn't like Ichabod Crane. Tries to combat him for the love of Katrina. So there's sort of like this love triangle going on. And Ichabod he's a schoolmaster, so he actually works at the local school. The locals, some of them are kind of like wowed by him because he's so intelligent, and he's also really caught up into the supernatural. So Brom Bones and other people in the community find out that that's his Achilles heel, that he's sort of a scaredy cat. And they're at this big party, Baltus Van Tassel's party, and I think it would have been on Christmas Eve because they didn't really have Halloween back in the 1800s or late 1700s. Told a story of the headless horseman, and the story is that the horseman was a headless Hessian, which was a mercenary during the American Revolution, and he is searching basically in the cemeteries and in the woods of Sleepy Hollow, looking like decapitating other people in the area who venture out at night. And they also tell of other stories too, and that's sort of the basis of my book, Ghosts of Sleepy Hollow. There is a witch that they kind of alluded to, and she's kind of taken on a life of her own too. Her name is Hulda the witch. And she actually, digging deep into her story, she actually never existed, but we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, the story, so he's going home from this party. You see the Headless Horseman kind of peer out, chases him throughout Sleepy Hollow, and you don't really know what happens to Ichabod Crane, whether or not he was killed, but you know that he was never seen or heard from again in the area. So he was kind of scared out of town. Now, I always automatically assumed that he was, taken by the Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman, this fearless phantom that galloped and had a hatchet, pretty much like Lizzie Borden, and decapitated him. And also in the cartoon, there's the jack-o'-lantern that's thrown at Ichabod Crane, and that's the symbol, like almost like the pumpkin killed him almost. And that, of course, didn't exist because there was no jack-o'-lanterns back in the 1800s. So it's really kind of like a post American Revolution tale. It was a ghost story that was told by locals at the time.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing to be able to step back into time and actually see this all unfold. I think that'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not a true story, so it's fictional.
Yeah.
But what's
to
interesting
be in
about
that
it,
area and the feel the vibes of what it would be like in that town.
well, I mean, what's interesting about it though, Rez, is that the Headless Horseman has been cited a lot. So my big question for the book was: did the Headless Horseman exist before Washington Irving wrote the story, or after? Like, in other words, was he chronicling a story, like a ghost that actually existed? And there have been many reports of a Headless Horseman ghost since the story was written, but not before. So it's almost like he took the story and appropriated it from other cultures, because there's, of course, there's a headless ghost. It's pretty common in England and throughout the UK,
Yeah.
but not necessarily in Sleepy Hollow. So he actually wrote the story. It's a short story, part of one of his popular books. He wrote it while he was overseas. So I think that it was kind of like an amalgam of like stories that were told locally, and kind of coupled it with what reality was, almost to make it more mysterious.
Yep.
When did,
Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rez.
go ahead, Christina.
I was going to ask when was the town of Sleepy Hollow incorporated, or whatever you have to do to make it a town? Because it was originally, like you said, Terrytown, right?
Yeah, there's Terrytown, and it was North Terrytown. It actually was fairly recent. It was in the 90s that it was officially incorporated, but they're already celebrating their 250th anniversary. Like, they've taken, like, the name is now what they call themselves. So even if you refer to North Terrytown, they'll quickly correct you as, oh, it's Sleepy Hollow. So they've kind of embraced the brand. And that's something that Washington Irving, this is what I found writing the book, was a master at branding. He was a pro at it. He, in fact, like, wrote a story that I feel like, and a lot of historians feel like, that inspired the idea of Santa Claus. He wrote about his adventures in Germany and talked about like an old Saint Nick character. And Charles Dickens apparently read his short stories and was inspired to write other stories and create like the Christmas Carol.
Right.
So I do feel that that he was a master when it comes to branding. They've called the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery for many years. And even at Sunnyside, that house is significant because that's actually where the it was a home that was at that property, which was the inspiration for the Van Tassel family. So where Sunnyside is where the story was actually set the night before the Ichabod took his famous race, and it was chased by the Headless Horseman. So it was loosely based on local locations, and that's what's so cool about it. You can visit the cemetery, you can visit the Old Dutch Church, you can visit Sunnyside, which is his home, where that could have happened. And also there was allusion to other stories like Huldah, the witch that didn't exist. She was a legend. Also, there was an allusion to there was a spy that was hanged, John Andre, uh, and his ghost supposedly haunts the area. And there's a lot of discussion, almost the after the fact of the American Revolution, the effects of this area, how it was affected by the American Revolution, and the ghost still lingering from that battle.
Interesting. I got a question now for you personally. You mentioned how there wasn't really many reports of the Headless Horseman prior to the book. So the people who have reported seeing this, do you think they're just seeing things, or do you think because of this book, this I want to say this thing has been manifested into our world and has become an actual entity now because so many people have read about it and put their thoughts and energy into it?
Yeah, that's the thesis of my book. I talk a lot about thought forms, tulpas, and egregores. So I would say that this is probably more of an egregore, in a sense that it was multiple people kind of creating this manifestation that has taken on a life. Yeah, so I do think that there is a real person that lost his head during the Battle of White Plains, and people have researched the real people that inspired these stories. And there's been multiple accounts of soldiers that were Hessian German mercenaries that lost their head. But the reports were actually, we can't find any reports before Washington Irving wrote the story, but we can we found reports after, and it was actually pretty prolific. I mean, I know of three pretty profound ones, but what's interesting about it, one of the big ones is he was walking over what was considered the Headless Horseman bridge, the bridge that the Headless Horseman, uh, like would cross, and the guy was carrying a pitcher of beer, walking from the tavern, walking home, and he says that the Headless Horseman, a specter on a horse, grabbed him, threw him over the bridge, and but he had a pitcher of beer. He was coming from the tavern, so hello.
Right? A little tipsy,
Yeah, and that was like the big story. And there's a gentleman, his name's Edward Mayhew Bacon, and he's sort of the modern perpetuator of these legends, and he's the one that chronicled all these stories of people reportedly seeing the Headless Horseman ghost. Have there been reports since then? Yes, but I also feel that kind of I really think he's a thought form, and I think we've almost created this ghost. And I think that there was more stories of Headless Horseman sightings in the early, like right after the story was written, because it was famous. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was like the Stephen King novel of the time,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
everyone read that story. So I do think it was an egregore that was created. But people would argue that there was a soldier that lost his head actually around Halloween, and that maybe this is a real ghost. So that's a debate. I let my readers decide if they think it was a manifestation or if it's actually a real ghost. I will say that a lot of people automatically assume that that Ichabod Crane was, was no more after that encounter with the Headless Horseman. And if you really look at the history, the local history, it was pretty common for the locals in North Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow to scare off outsiders. So I think that Washington Irving actually always was implying that he was not necessarily killed by the Headless Horseman or beheaded by the Headless Horseman, but he was, he was scared off, that it was Brom Bones in costume. And I always automatically assumed it was a ghost, so even
Right.
Washington Irving was seeing that it wasn't a ghost, that it was a person dressed up as a ghost.
Interesting.
I do remember talking about that in literature class in college. That, there was so many people that was convinced it was a ghost. Yeah. Oh, here comes my little friend. No. He wants to go outside, but he's fighting with another cat in the neighborhood, so we're not letting him outside. Anyway.
I've had mine at my feet this whole time bugging me. So
He's just over here making noise.
So, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on thought form manifestations? Do you feel like that is something that a lot of what we're dealing with out in the field as paranormal investigators?
I do.
I
I do
think a lot
too.
of it is
Yeah.
everything from the Slender Man craze to even with our EVPs that we catch on recorders. If enough people are thinking about the same thing, who says that we're not imprinting that EVP on there?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And with these, now that the way that paranormal investigation has changed, I'm not really sure who's investigating anything at this point, because it's like everybody goes to the same famous places, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, even if there wasn't something there to begin with, all of these people now say seen the same things. I think that, yeah, I think there's
they're good.
a lot of thought formation going on right now in the paranormal
And
community.
even getting back to the curse Lizzie Borden and the Lizzie Borden murder house,
Mhm.
people ask me, like, I think that Lizzie Borden's spirit is still at that house. And I don't. I think that there's what I call crazy Lizzie. And you can argue that it's an egregore or a thought form because the story is told every day, investigated every day. And they're like, Lizzie, did you murder your father and stepmother? And but the truth is, like, I don't think that that's her spirit. The spirit that I connected with was at her later in life home, which is Maplecroft. And I don't think that that entity that I call Crazy Lizzie is actually her spirit. Uh,
Yeah, I
another
agree.
another theory is that maybe it's a splinter, like a piece of her that implanted itself in the house, but it's not her. It's almost like kind of taken a monstrous form.
Yeah,
That makes
see that
sense.
being a
Mhm.
splinter. Well, if you think about it, you know, all of our dust is, and all of everything that we leave behind, our essence is in wherever we live and spend the most time. So if that's already embedded into the property, then you got someone coming in saying, Lizzie, did you do this? Lizzie, did you do this over and over again? That energy is left behind, I believe, is going to be corrupted into giving the people what they want to hear. So now you have what you're calling a crazy Lizzie there, who might have started off as the original energy, but now is manifested into what she is today.
I
I
agree.
I did a recording. So the getting back to the producers of the show, and again, I they did a lovely job as producers. But they wanted me to ask Lizzie, did you kill your father and stepmother? And of course, I did not want to say that, but I did. So I had my recorder. I'm like, Lizzie, did you kill your father and stepmothers? And you can hear the most horrific crying, like almost like screaming, like, no, like, stop asking me that question. And this is after channeling Eliza Borden on the couch, and and having this really intense emotional connection. And they didn't end up using that EVP, but that scream was so primordial. And so I really feel that, in that case, maybe it was Lizzie Borden telling me, stop asking me that question, or it could be her egregore responding. And it was just such an emotional response to my question.
Right.
Definitely. Well, didn't you guys get a response on one of the recorders? I'm a good girl, or I was a good daughter, or something like that, too. That sounded really emotional.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, the whole investigation was emotional. And for me, like, yes, I'm a good girl. Even I didn't even, I wasn't part of the investigation. That's the other thing too. Like, I was parts of other parts of the investigation, but I came in um, after they had investigated the night before. So I came in on the second night of the investigation. So I didn't hear that I'm a good girl. So I was channeling that, like I was picking up on Lizzie saying, "I'm a good girl. I'm a good girl," and they're like, we have that EVP. So that was interesting too.
Yeah,
That I was picking up on that. She was saying, I'm a good girl. And she was saying, like, I stop asking me that. It was like very much um, someone who didn't want to take responsibility for the crime and stop calling her to that location. I did promise her that I would never call her back there. And I felt so guilty that I did. Because it's, that had a lot of really bad memories for her. It's almost like
yeah,
re-traumatizing the spirits.
Yeah.
And I'm like I'm like, "One more time, cousin Lizzie, like, can you come back to this house?" And I really I felt guilty calling her back, but I felt like that we had a job to do, and I think that we did it. I mean, we did cross over some spirits. A lot of that was not on the show, But my big concern was the children, Eliza Borden's children. Every time I talk about this, I get emotional because it's so emotional for me to experience that. But Eliza was the neighbor, not related to us by blood, but her children are. And she was married to Lodwick Borden, and Eliza Borden was killed her children. She killed 2 of her children, threw them down a well. The 3rd child was able to survive. But I do feel like that same entity that may have taken over Lizbeth, as she likes to be referred to, was the same entity that took over Eliza Borden. And the woman that I connected to the most during that show was Eliza, and that's the one how I was in a trance channeling session with her, and she kept saying, my children," and she was like, "Protect my children," and I feel like that when we did the seance, and if you watch the show, it was Dave Schrader was fighting automatic writing, so you'll see him convulsing, and really all that was him fighting it. But he also said that's not a woman, like that's something else taking me over, and that was all real, by the way. That was not like acting or theatrics. Everything that happened at the table, in fact, there was more that happened there that wasn't on the show. And then Chris and I were telepathically communicating throughout that whole seance that we had. And I'm like, Chris, because in the show, I could see what the recordings were. Like I was, we were able to see what really happened. And I'm like, didn't we like have this huge argument at the seance table? And he's like, no. And he's like, but we were talking telepathically. And I'm like, okay. So Chris and I were on another plane, and
Yep.
we were talking in another realm, and I thought we had this full blown argument. I really do, because he was like, Sam, like, focus on, because I was channeling all the other energies, and he was like, focus on the children, and I was also keeping back the darker entity that was in the room with us as well. And so my job really in that seance was to block all the negative energy. So all the negative energy was behind me. So I did a circle of protection around our table, but it was, oh my gosh, it was so intense.
Oh
Wow.
yeah. I know Dave, and I've spent some time with Chris, and I've actually talked to both of them a little bit about that seance there and stuff like that, and about that investigation and the whole documentary. I know Chris told me it was like a lot of the times you were picking up on things that he was already picking up on, and vice versa. You guys were just bouncing right back and forth off each other naturally. I always
Chris,
thought that was a cool thing.
yeah, Chris and I never met Chris before this, and we were so connected. It was like this weird connection. In fact, like there was stuff that didn't make it for the show, but his mother, while we were filming, she had fallen on the ground in her home while we were filming, and she was there, and his father, who I never met, didn't even know his whole story, walked into the room and said, Chris, check on your mother. And I'm like, Chris, this man just walked into the room, and turns out that his mother was in danger. And they did
Yep.
allude to it in the documentary. They did say that she was fine after, and truthfully, if you talk to Chris, she wasn't. But yeah, like it was super intense. We were meant to be together, and we were meant to work together. And
Yep.
I feel that cast, like with Dave and Chris, I will forever be bonded with them from that experience.
Oh, you can see it definitely on film, and some of the stuff I've seen you guys do afterwards, different
Yeah.
events working together. You can tell there's a chemistry there, and there's a bond that's unbreakable.
And speaking of Chris, I mean, like he's been going through cancer
Right.
treatments right now,
Yeah.
Yep.
and and I because we're so connected, I really like I feel in my heart that he will beat this, and I also feel that uh, as a community, it's so lovely to see the people kind of rallying together to support Chris in this time of crisis. And I think really, if you talk to him, he just wants prayers and good thoughts, and of course.
Yep.
Donations are great too, but I think that he really just wants the prayers and support right now while he's going through the treatments. But Yeah, it's been like our group, we've all had things happen after. I mean, Chris and I talked about this after filming the show. The entity did came back. We faced retaliation.
Yeah.
And so we both Chris and I were dramatically affected after, and this is an ongoing thing for almost a year, almost 2 years. It took me like 2 years to recover from that show. So what you see on the show, there's more to it. More happened.
Wow.
There always isn't something that grand of I can't think of the word I'm searching for. Uh, uh, Grand of experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Like when you go through it, you're going to have residual and have other things happen in regards to that, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never done anything that publicly, but there have been things that I've done where, psychically there's an effect afterwards, and sometimes it lasts for a long time. Sometimes it takes a long time to recover from that, and sometimes people don't recover from it. And that's one of the things that I have that's my new crusade, is to get people to understand that you have to take care of your energy. You
Yeah.
have to take care of your energy. And that's like my big crusade right now. That's what I speak about. Every time somebody hands me a microphone, that's what I'm speaking about now. You have to take care of your energy. And I think that it's something that in the paranormal community has not really been, it's not that it's not been taken seriously. I just feel like we could learn more about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And and
Yeah.
me as well. I mean, like I teach a group called Spirit Squad, and actually, Christina, you were
I
one of our
love those
lecturers.
ladies.
Yeah,
They
it's
were
a lovely group.
awesome.
And our we have a crystal shield of protection. So we really do work on protection.
Yeah,
And we also whoever has their techniques that they want to bring to the group, that is our number one. Our number one is like protecting ourselves and protecting our energy. So we've even had one of our students, Kelly, as a Reiki master, and she's really worked on understanding your energy and like protecting it.
yeah,
And so it's my crusade as well. Like it's something that I'm very passionate about, because really I didn't know what I know now while I was filming Curse of Lizzie Borden. I've learned a lot since then,
yes.
that because I would never let a spirit take me over like I did. I knew that I could channel, like I knew that I had that ability, but it just happened, and she hijacked me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Dave, it's about to happen. And he's like, okay, like he got his tape recorder, and Chris got his tape recorder. And I'm just like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm about to channel, guys. And she was really she took me over, and so I would never let that happen again. It was too draining, it was too emotional. And now if I channel, I tell them to sit next to me. I have been taken over since then. But if I get I guess I'm not as prone to be hijacked now, because I've set firm boundaries with the spirits. I'm like,
Okay.
guys, I can channel, but please respect my boundaries and sit next to me and tell me what you have to tell me. Do not take me over.
Yeah, and I think those of us who trans channel, we have to be even more careful, because, we are literally allowing someone else to enter our bodies, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like you said, taking you over. And I continue to trans channel, but man, I have gone to great lengths to make sure that my spirit guides have my back, and that there is a literal frequency. Anybody below that frequency is not allowed in, period. End of discussion. So, it's like, I think that we really need to take the energy aspect a lot more seriously than we have in the past. And now that we're
Yes.
sitting back and I don't know about you, I know a lot of psychics, healers, paranormal investigators, channelers who are really sick because they're not taking care of their energy. And over a period of time, it becomes cumulative,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm actually dealing with a family member now that was in Reiki and in energy healing and everything else, but she was never taught how to release it and how to recycle it. So she took it into herself, and now she's paying the repercussions from it.
Shaman
And
too. A lot of shamans that I have met over the years that are sick because they literally take the disease into their body, but maybe they don't get rid of all of it,
you know,
you know?
And unfortunately, I think it's part of like what we do. I mean, like sad, like there are ways to do it where you can completely get like release it from you. I mean, I know I had an attachment that nearly killed me and was removed by a shaman.
Yeah.
So that like it- that alone, so I know like I know the importance of like not holding on to it, because I
Right.
was basically channeling this entity, and it was a lower level entity that took me over. It basically like possessed me, which is not really what, I don't like that word possessed, but that's what it was. Like he took me over.
Yeah.
And but then the shaman did the removal and I could see it physically leave my body, and it actually left from my stomach, which is weird. I never,
hmm,
like, I don't know why it would leave my stomach. So when I push out, I do like a J move. I breathe in my nose and I push out my stomach, because that's sort of like where that's how I kind of give birth to, I guess, like
Yeah.
negative energies that have taken me over. But
Well,
I
if you
push it out
think
of my
about
stomach.
it, that makes sense because that's where the solar plexus is, and the solar
Yeah.
plexus is the power center of your body.
Yeah, and I don't, and even like when I have mediums read my aura, they're like, "Oh, there's something wrong with your stomach." It's almost like my area is my almost like my filter. I filter out all the
Right.
crap, I have to make sure that I take care of myself too. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I've had physical issues. I have rheumatoid arthritis, and that's something that's flared up the last 2 years. It's genetic, so I don't think I got it from being a medium. But
Right.
I do feel that energy um, can be accelerated almost if you don't take
Mm.
care of yourself.
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, I think about it a lot, and it's almost, is it worth it? And it's my calling. I can't undo this. I can't like go, I don't want to be a medium anymore.
Well,
Um,
same here. Exactly. I completely
yeah,
100% agree with you because I can't do that either. And,
right.
I have been deathly ill because I haven't taken care of my energy. And so I guess that's, just like it's like we learn by doing and we learn from our experiences. And there's this, if I can get people to understand that there's ways to do this without allowing that to happen, then I feel like I've accomplished something.
and I agree. And I think the biggest hurdle in this, we've all dealt with this, is using drugs and alcohol to kind of like drink it away. And the
Yeah.
fact that
Yep.
we were able to kind of understand that part of it first, that's where
Mhm.
I think a lot of the health issues come from fellow mediums, is they use alcohol to self-medicate or other things to self-medicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
To numb yourself. It happens. I did it for years myself. I didn't want to accept my gifts, and you sit there and go, "Well, we'll numb this away so I don't feel it as much, and I can block it out."
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work. It just causes more harm.
But I have to tell you, I've been meeting more people in the spiritual, metaphysical, paranormal world who are in recovery from addiction or, whatever the addiction is, alcohol, drugs, whatever, but more people who are in recovery and really coming to terms with their gifts. And I think that's a beautiful thing. But the next step is learn to take care of your energy.
Yes, for me,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's for you too, Christina. It's a work in progress,
Oh,
because
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
because I have dramatically failed at that part.
So have I. So have I. I have literally died from failing at that part. Okay, so I get
Yeah,
that. I get that. And maybe
yeah.
that's why it's so important to me is because I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. And if I can help someone not go through that, I am happy to step up and help. That's a big thing for me. And I know it is for you too, because
It is.
we talked a lot when you were in Wisconsin. We kind of had a captive audience with each other in the car for about 4.5 hours. So we we talked a lot, and we're on the same page with a lot of things, and I just think it's such a beautiful thing. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, Christina was my ride back and forth to the Milwaukee airport. By
Yeah.
the way, that is my favorite airport of like, I've traveled all over. The
I
Milwaukee
love
airport
that airport.
is
Yes.
amazing.
In and
I,
out.
I specifically love the discombobulation or the recombobulation area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I used that time. I was like, I'm gonna recombobulate.
Absolutely. This has been great. Our time, I guess, has come to an end, but tell us one more time, how can people book an appointment with you if you're still taking clients? Where can people get your books?
Yeah, so I basically do like I don't do readings online. I generally do them. So I teach a class called Spirit Squad, and Spirit Squad is kind of like a group of up and coming mediums. And you can go to my website sambaltrusis.com to learn more about it. It's sort of like what happens is I go all over the country to the various events, and that one person in the audience I connect with, and they join Spirit Squad. So it's more like a spiritual, like going all over trying to meet new people. So it's kind of like a that's how I do it. I don't necessarily solicit people to join Spirit Squad. But then my books are available on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, any of the online bookstores. But also they're available if you visit Salem, or even if you visit Sleepy Hollow. You'll be able to find my copies of my books at the various bookstores. And then when it comes to events, I have a list of events on my website, sambaltrusis.com. And it has all my upcoming events, including Mass Paracon, which is October 4th through 6th, which is in 2 days. And Christina's going to be there.
Yes.
And amazing. It's going to be an amazing gathering of people from all over the country. We have Patty Negri, John Zaffis, Christina is going to be
Yeah.
there. And myself and Richard Estep, who's a great author. And so all sorts of people that are joining us for this weekend. Oh, Brian Cano is going to be there too. Can't
Okay.
forget Brian. And we added Dave Schrader. So speak of Dave
Oh,
Schrader, he's a recent addition to the list. He actually called me and said, Sam, I got, because Chris's event was going to be on the same weekend.
right.
And because Chris is in the hospital, they had to postpone the event. And he's like, I'm open that weekend. And, to me, like, this is honoring Chris and what Chris is struggling with as a friend. And my goal really with Dave is to get with Dave, and I'm gonna get emotional, but just to pray for Chris. Like that's what I want to do, because we both love him.
Yeah.
And Dave, of course, knows Chris. He's known him for years, so they go way back. But I'm connected to both of them on a very spiritual level, and just us being together, I feel like that's important to me, to be there on a spiritual level for our friend Chris.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you again very much. If anyone would like to book a reading with me, you can do that through my website, christinabloom.com. And my books are also available, and all of my shows are also listed right there on the homepage of my website. So including this one
Mhm.
and my new upcoming show, which is Paramystic Christina. And that will be coming up on Zone 5 Radio. So I'm excited about that too. It'll also be on my new YouTube page, which is also Paramystic Christina. So looking forward to that.
Very cool.
Yeah. And Rez, can people book with you?
Get a hold of me on Facebook if you're looking for a reading or something like that. Shoot me a friend request, or you can reach me at resneckinc@gmail.com. Just a message away. Always happy to help anybody out. I do have an event coming up that I'd like to talk about. November 1st, for all those out in the Faribault, Minnesota area. I'll be at the what is it, the Performing Arts Center, or Performing Center of Arts. They're having Fair Blue Bar Crawl. It's a fundraiser for the arts. And everyone that knows me, one of my favorite things is art. I'm a tattooist. So I'm going out there. I'll be doing readings. Anyone that wants to book a reading ahead of time, before the show, before the day of the event, message me through resneckinc@gmail.com, and you'll actually get a discounted price. They're doing all kinds of things. So as we get closer, I'll let you a little bit know more about different things that they're having at this event for you guys.
Excellent. Thank you. And Sam, I look forward to seeing you real soon. And I am a vendor at Mass Paracon, so I will be doing readings. I'll be offering readings. So, you can get an in-person reading instead of a Zoom reading. So
And also,
Yeah.
guys, if you do
Good.
make it to the events, Ghost of Sleepy Hollow, Hearts of the Headless Horseman. Yay!
Yay.
Remember,
Awesome.
Christina, you're getting my copy.
Yep, yep, I know. I'll be getting your copy from Sam. Thank you again, Sam and Rez. Thank you. And I'm just super excited, and this has been a great show. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween.
Bye. Happy Halloween.